Hi. Most piano students like to learn For Elise along the way, but they usually perform the A section quite well, and very often they struggle with the more difficult B and C sections. I'm going to be making a series of videos to help you master those. Today we're going to be talking about the demisemiquaver passage in the B section, which is this passage. And specifically we're going to be talking about the right hand of it. Now I'm going to divide that passage into two parts. This is your part one. This is your part two. Then again there's part one. And then there's again part two. So let's talk about part one first. The first way to practice is to simply play the lower notes of this, C, making sure that you're using the correct fingering, which would be 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. And also making sure that you're following the natural pulse. There's a natural pulse of going slightly more, slightly less, slightly more, slightly less, slightly more, slightly less. Okay, so once that's comfortable, so you're basically just using the finger and the forearm. Once that's comfortable, you're able to move on to the second strategy, which is to point to the G on top and start the same procedure again, but this time as you do it, the wrist rotates to the right and up each time. We're not going to play the G on top, but we're going to rotate the wrist and the bridge of your hand, just here, focus under the second finger, and we're going to rotate that to have the fifth finger standing there in a reasonably upright position. So let's do that. So we go. Then we rotate. 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 Okay, then the next thing to do is to give that a bit more looseness in the wrist. So your rotation feels much more relaxed. Okay, next you can start to add the G in groups, and each time you do it you should feel incredibly relaxed. We do it with big rotations first. And then we let the rotation get smaller and smaller. As it gets smaller, our speed gets quicker. Notice how this area is still always lifting up. Okay, then once that's really comfortable, we move on to doing two of those groups at a time. So we go. Again. So then you let that get faster. Then you move on to 3 and you try to keep the more, less, more, and then less, more, less. So we go more, less, more, less, more, less, more, less, more, less, more, less. Okay, and you keep doing that until that feels very easy. Sorry, I forgot about the less. Now we're going to put it all together. So we're going to go slowly first with big rotations. Now, as you get quicker, the rotations will get smaller and more relaxed. Making sure that this always stays high, the area here under the second finger. And it should feel quite comfortable after a while. All right, moving on to part 2, this part. First of all, we're going to analyze this in terms of little clusters. Our first cluster is these 3 notes. Our second cluster is these 4 notes. And then the third finger goes over to E. We don't play the thumb in this next cluster. So once more, our 3 clusters. Third finger goes to E. Okay, now let's look at each individual cluster. We're going to be moving upwards and then turning. Generally, when we do that, we want to use a movement of the elbow that lifts outwards and forwards and upwards. Outwards, forwards, upwards. Okay, so what we're going to do, the first group, we go da-da-da, and we end up upwards, forwards, upwards. So let's do that letting go. Now the next group, we're going to play with the elbow still up and out, because we want to be free to turn. When we turn, we drop. But now we have to get to G, so there's a little movement of the wrist to the right. Let's look at that last one. So we're here and we go. So I'll show you them one more time. We stay upwards. We come to the left and to the right. Okay, so if I start to slowly put that together. Elbow out, forwards, back, and little circle. Elbow out, forwards, back, and little circle. Okay, so then you just increase the speed of that. Always making sure that you're pushing down to the bottom of each key. And keep your fingers close to the piano, don't strike. So stay close to the piano. Alright, so then you just get quicker at that. Alright, so then then you go back and you practice part 1 again, but this time you start with the thumb. You go through all the same things, starting with the thumb, and then 2, and do the same, go through the same procedures, and then you do the same thing here. But let's just look at the ending. The first time, part 2 ends like, So this results in that type of little circle of the wrist. Now the second time, it ends differently. So the difference, we go out, we come back, and then out again, because we want to go upwards here. So just thinking of having very loose wrist, you practice the 2 endings. So first ending is, second ending is, I hope this helps you, I'm sure it will. And tomorrow I'll be working with you on the left hand and then putting them together.